Yeah, my name is Ian Ridley. I'm the Senior Director of Humanitarian Operations for WorldVision International. I think there are two kinds of risks. I divide it into staff that are in emergency contexts when an emergency happens, so predominantly local and national staff, and then staff that we send in, international staff. So if we think of our local staff, if they're affected by a natural disaster, for example, they may not be able to give their all to their work because they have their family to take care of, they have demands from their family, their loved ones, the society that they're in. So we need to be sensitive to that when we're working with our local staff. Equally, the staff that we're sending in, they have a different set of demands. They're detached from their families. They're in a place that's perhaps unfamiliar to them. They're dealing with things that are difficult to see, difficult to experience. So I think on a very human level, we need to look at both of those groups of people and say, what's the best thing that we can do? Obviously, for staff coming in from particularly into a conflict situation or a politically difficult context, getting them well briefed, making sure that they've got local counterparts to help them understand the things that they're not picking up because they don't speak the language. All those kinds of things are very important. Equally for local staff, making sure they've got the time and the support they need to take care of their families, to take care of their daily needs. That's just as important as well, and I think that leads us to slightly different solutions for each group. So I can tell you that in WorldVision, a large part of what we do for local staff and international staff is based on a peer support system. So recognizing that it's both expensive and inefficient to send in psychologists or other supporters to places we work, we're working to identify and build the capacity of key local staff to provide that peer-to-peer support for others in the office, others in the organisation, and to know critically when peer support is not enough and when somebody needs a referral to maybe get some professional help. The work we do is very stressful, it's very long hours, people are dealing with situations that are sometimes very difficult to understand, whether it's a natural disaster. I think of the Indian Ocean tsunami many years ago, just the concept of so many people having died in a natural disaster, that alone was hard to come to terms with. Our staff in South Sudan or other parts of the world who are dealing with daily conflict, they may not always need professional support, but it's important to know when to bring that professional support in. So the peer support idea is designed to do that, to peer-to-peer support and then refer on when people need professional help. For our international staff, so I work in a large organisation, different offices have different protocols. My own group, the Humanitarian Operations Group, we work with an external service that helps us at all stages of somebody's life cycle, if you like, on my team. So when they're selected, they'll have a chat with a psychologist about the kind of work they're getting into. Do they really understand the impact it's going to have on them and possibly on their families? Is this really a step they want to take so that people go into this work with their eyes wide open? Or if they decide it's not for them, that they make that decision before they make the right decision before they get into it. Then during their time on the team, they're supported either by telephone, when we have our team meetings, we have psychologists come to our team meetings and work with our staff. But most critically of all, after each emergency response deployment, we have a group debrief afterwards. We get everybody that was deployed together, spend 3 or 4 days talking through what they saw, what they experienced, what they felt, and helping them bounce back and get ready for the next one. So slightly different approaches, but an investment that is suited to the needs of the particular staff. So I think one thing we've learned is that you have to be consistent in your approach to staff care. So yes, you learn from every incident, but having a level of reliability. So if I think of the team I'm responsible for, they know that when they find themselves in a situation, whether that's Central African Republic or somewhere related to the Syria response or Nepal, that if they're having a difficult time, they can pick up the phone and there's somebody to talk to. Somebody that's not a WorldVision staff member, somebody who won't report back to management about what they're dealing with. So knowing that that's always there is very, very important, that level of consistency and reliability. And I think that's emerging as well for our local staff. So I've seen several examples now, for example, where WorldVision has rallied around as an organisation to create a staff care fund. So we raise money for the disaster affected population from the general public, but there are schemes such as salary sacrifice, people donating one day's salary to create a staff care fund for the staff that are affected. I think that notion of solidarity from the whole organisation and staff that are on the front lines or in the deep field, that they know there are people elsewhere that care for them to the extent that they'll give up a day's salary, that's a fantastically powerful thing. The idea is perhaps more powerful than the actual salary sacrifice itself. So if we don't get staff care right in the field, I think one of the worst possible outcomes can be that a team becomes dysfunctional, it fractures. If people see individuals being treated differently on the team, or if there's, for example, no unity between the team leadership and the security management of the team. So when I was in northern Iraq in 2003, in Mosul, I discovered very quickly it was very important that I, as team leader, and the security officer would meet very early in the day and agree on what our operations plan was and wasn't for the day, based on what we knew about the context, and that we communicated that with a united front to the team. Had we not done that, we'd have had project directors going off on their own in all sorts of different directions, doing their own thing, and we'd have created a huge risk to the project and the program. And it's a bit like the first rule of first aid, right? Don't become a victim yourself. You can only effectively serve people if you're healthy, you're mobile, you know where everybody is, and you know what the game plan is for the day. So in a high-risk environment, very important that duty of care is taken very seriously. So some of the challenges are, as well as the human element to duty of care and to safety and security of staff, there's the legal element as well. So particularly for international staff, they may come from countries where there are things like corporate manslaughter acts and other legislation which causes the sending office to have perhaps quite a conservative view of duty of care. Sometimes that can create the challenge that different parts of the organisation really appear to have a different standard. So some parts of the organisation will send people into a given context, others may hesitate. And obviously as a single organisation, or at least flying under a single organisational flag, that can be a bit of a challenge. I think another key challenge is that staff care done well does cost money. I think one of the reasons that peer support is so successful is it's a scalable model. These are not specialist psychologists that are on call for staff. These are people with regular jobs, but their managers have agreed that they can be peer supporters. And so when they're needed, they can spend a portion of their time giving support to those around them. It's a relatively cost-effective model. I think that's the biggest challenge that we need to overcome as a sector, to do scalable staff care and duty of care in difficult locations. It does come at a high cost, and we know we're in a sector where keeping costs down is something that we value. I would say that every humanitarian needs to understand that safety, security, well-being starts with the individual, starts with each of us. So no matter what your organizational context, no matter what context you find yourself in the field, I think all of us have an ability to find ways of coping, whether it's physical exercise, whether it's stopping work at a reasonable hour each day, whether it's making sure that you get at least a day or half a day off. Finding those strategies that you can use individually, irrespective of what your organization or those around you are doing, I think is very important. I carry a Bose headset with me when I travel, and it's a great way of just blocking out everything else for an hour or two, listening to music. It sounds very simple, it sounds almost simplistic, but self-care does start with you. It doesn't start with your organization. The organization can support you, and we're all responsible for our own safety and security as well. So paying attention to what the security officer is saying. If you don't agree, having a discussion, a reasonable discussion rather than an argument, and trying to reach an accommodated view, I think, is the way forward. Too often I've seen people on their own mission, if you like, in the field. I would say that their mission needs to be more to look after themselves and then help their organization look after the people they're there to serve.